Hello, I'm Mario Vaden. I'm a certified arborist in Southern Oregon, and today I decided to share with people about my pruning tools that I've selected over the years. I've done this long enough, since 1980, that I thought maybe some of my selections here might help some home gardeners make selections and even some professionals. So I don't climb at all these days. I do a lot more pruning than a regular landscape contractor. I am a landscape contractor. I'm a certified landscape technician, and I'm a certified arborist. And so I've worked at 5 golf courses and country clubs, 2 university campuses, and that was from 1980 to 1987. And then I've done residential and a little bit of commercial pruning since then, mostly pruning. I do landscape installations, but I would say that 80% of my work has been pruning of trees and shrubs. And I boiled it down to a collection that's just worked out good for me, and I just run you my thoughts on why I choose what I choose. Actually, the first thing I probably start with is one of the most basics, is the hand pruners, and what I've ended up with is basically Felco 2s. I actually have 2 pairs of them. I've had these since 1980, and I will say a friend of mine that's an arborist, Douglas, and he's now in Bloomington, Indiana, he and I had both bought what you would call an imitation set of Felcos, say around like 1988, 1890. And I think we each got about 3 or 4 days out of them and they broke. These here I've had since 1985. I don't know if I misspoken that. 1985 on these. It says Felco right here, and stamped on the same piece is Corona, who distributed for them until 1984-85, I was told. I bought 1 pair myself, and I was given another pair by the University of Portland. So I would use these continuously since 1985, daily, weekly. I just wear them in a leather belt and scabbard that I wear on the side. And I would just say the things, I don't want to call them indestructible. I do want to add that on those. I tried another pair of Felcos, which are also pretty good. It has a rotating, where the 4 fingers grip. That part rotates, which could ease it up for some people. But what happens, I work on a ladder. And so sometimes when I'm on the ladder, I want to do a cut on the other side. So I'll take my pruners and hand them over. And when I have to flip the tool upside down, if the rotating part gets under my thumb, it flips out, whereas this one is stable. So that's why I stick with the Felco 2s instead of the Felco 7s, is because the rotating handle doesn't work good for me as somebody that occasionally uses a ladder, which I use the 6-foot and 10-foot Tallman orchard ladders for my small ones. And then I have a small pair of these are Felco, I think they're 20s. Now it says 210s. I think what I used to have was Felco 20s. It was a short aluminum, almost like a cast aluminum handle. These are a tube, very solid tube, and it's designed much like a Felco 2, just really deluxe on here. And so I've got these to spare my hand pain when I do fruit trees particularly, because these are really maneuverable. What it does is it instead of all that pressure on my fingers, it puts 2 hands into the single cut. Actually, it's putting 2 arms into the cuts. So these things can maneuver really quick on doing fruit trees in small areas. They're pretty indestructible. I'd actually still also have the pair I had since like 1990, but I left them in a yard once and they disappeared from there. So I got those. And then for the handsaw, I will say the best I've ever really come across for me is the Silky, and it's the Zubat. And it's a combination of, not only is the blade sharp, the handle is comfortable rubber, but the hardware that mounts has never come loose. I don't think in 15, 20 years of using these, I've ever had the hardware ever spin loose on these. They are expensive, I will say that. I think the blades are about $40, and the saw and the scabbard together are close to $70 on the Zubat, give or take, these days. So anyway, it's expensive enough so that I don't use them at ground level when I'm cutting off stems. I keep an old handsaw for that. What brand? Oregon. I tried Oregon. They're not bad. It's good. So it's an old set. Instead of throwing it away, I actually just keep it to cut down a ground level. So in case there's a piece of grit or whatever, it doesn't ruin my good blade. So I always keep an extra one of these. I will say the Oregon was pretty decent on that one. And then also I tried another brand that was Samurai. And it's not bad either. It was the least expensive online. The blade is a little flimsier for me. So sometimes when I'm pushing, it might like kink, like bind up a little bit. So I just don't get the Samurai anymore. I wouldn't say don't get one if you do it part-time, but I'm addressing today, I feel, also professionals, I'm hoping, are watching this. And so for me, I honestly would say if you're going to do it a lot, the Silky is one of the best. I will say, too, that I prefer a curved blade versus a straight blade. Because I don't have a stick here. I hate to use my arm as an example, but let's say this is a stick. So if you're cutting it, I'll just use my hand. You're cutting across, this blade comes behind it. If it's a straight blade, you almost have to push down while you're pulling. So you got to like push and pull in the same motion. This one, on the curved blade, because it wraps behind, on the pull stroke, it's kind of eliminating that downward pressure, so it's easier on the arms for pruning. So I recommend the curved blades over the straight blades. I don't really do much shearing. I keep a pair of, there's several brands that are good. These are Barnell's, and they're really sleek, smooth little blades on here, but I use these for really fine stuff. These could even do dianthus, carnation. We'll get like a lot of stems, and I'll cut like little flower heads or whatever. I don't have them here today, but I actually keep one pair of like head shears that have like little notches in the stems, and those notches tend to like grab some of the stems, so when you're squeezing it together, the stems don't like slide out, like slide down the blade on there. So I usually keep two pairs, but these Barnell's are the ones that I chose for carry around. I really don't like head shearing, but for what I do, I actually went with the still. I used to have the regular head shear, the small one, gas. I don't really like electric head shears, but on the gas, this one here, I like it because the blade articulates. So that, if I'm doing like a boxwood hedge, I can hold it and I can lock in, and I can actually just walk along at one height, back and forth like this. Or if it's a little taller hedge, then you can actually grab and go across the top of the hedge. So these things are pretty maneuverable. I mean, the weight's not that bad on it. I've had this thing for like 10, 12 years, I guess. And I just use it occasionally. It's just getting ready for sharpening for me for the first time now. So anyway, there's several brands. I picked a still on it. And so that's what I use for that. Pole pruners. I'm going to disappear off camera for just a few seconds. And I'm back. So, I've tried telescoping poles, and I went ahead and went with these interlocking poles. I prefer, this one normally would go for a bigger blade, but I actually just re-drilled out a handsaw blade that I use on it. I prefer these because the telescoping ones, say maybe they could get pitch on the tubes, that slide together. This one isn't really a problem on that because it doesn't telescope. It can get pitch. It just doesn't stop it from working. It has a really heavy-duty hook on it. This brand is Fano. And so, I mean, this is not what I'm pruning, but if there's a branch I pruned and it gets hung up in the tree, I can grab it and pull the branch out with this thing. I can get out at an angle and work the limb out one way or another, and then I can either undercut or top cut with it. So I do use a rope attachment for it, but I keep it separate because for me nothing is worse than having the handsaw or the saw blade on it at the same time that this is on it, because then they're just fighting against one another, getting hung up in the tree with the rope dangling down. So I got this one that I put on a separate piece. This one's actually a Marvin head, is what this is. So it says Marvin on it, and it fits into the same tube diameter. So I use this maybe like once a month for occasional things where I have to lop or something. Otherwise, I would just rather have it separate. And this is what I use most of the time. And then also, I'll just extend that up. This one, I keep 3 of these poles. They're 6-footers roughly, and they just snap together. And so I've used 8-footers before, and the reason that I prefer the 6s is if you have 3 8-footers, it ends up being 24 feet long. And so when you're really getting up there, the thing's just like bending all over the place. Whereas if you get 3 6s together for 18 feet, yeah, it's bending, but it's not near as bad. And I find that this 6-foot and then the 12-foot option, connected on 2 of them is a really good way to go on the pruning. If I'm not, and then I got the ladder to use. But so anyway, I prefer these definitely over the telescoping ones. Then on root pruning, occasionally there's like a root around a sprinkler head that's going to damage it or something, so I keep a reciprocating saw for that to go into the dirt. I'll discard the blades as needed, but I don't like to run my hand tools, and sometimes an axe is not really a good thing to use around sprinklers and that kind of a thing, whereas this one you can be a little bit more precise with it. So pretty much just stuck with DeWalt brand. There's several good ones. I don't know if I'd recommend one brand over another, but I would just say I keep a reciprocating saw for roots. Girdling roots around the base of a trunk. There's a girdling root. Usually I'm just using the tip of the chainsaw lightly. I've had much bigger chainsaws than this. I've used Husqvarna, and still, somebody recommended, it might be called Dolmar now, it was called Sachs Dolmar, and it was a dealer, and I felt bad for him because he said like, oh, Sachs Dolmar, they're like the greatest. So I bought one, and in 2 days the engine kind of like broke apart on it. So ever since then I've just kind of stuck with the Husqvarna, and still I just got, because there's a dealer down here in Southern Oregon that I liked, so I went there. I just use the MS250, works fine for me for what I do, because I'm not doing much in tree removals now, it's mostly pruning. So I used that one, and then because of a property I did in Jacksonville, I got into getting these small, let's see, the model is MSA 140C. It's been replaced with an updated model now. It's not the top of the line. The Pro Grade one had a shield over the button you got to push to get the trigger to go on it, and my gloves, it was hard to get to the button, so I went for this one just because there's no shield around the button. For me, that was important. I will say that, and some of you might know this, if the chain on a regular chainsaw gets, you're cutting down, gets pinched in the wood a little bit, just a little bit, it can kind of like muscle its way out. You just like gun it a little and you can fight it out of like a little bit of a bind. With the electrics, that doesn't work. It's pretty much just for cuts that are not under any real tension. But what's interesting, when I use this, if I say a tank lasted 20 to 30 minutes of, thinning out little trees on the hill and branches and cuttings, suppose 30 minutes for this, I found the runtime was like 40 to 45 on these ones. So I felt the runtime was actually longer if you're not going to do a lot of heavy-duty cutting, but just a bunch of little stuff on it. It's a lot lighter. It's definitely about half the weight. I liked this one so much after like 2 days of using it that I decided maybe I'd get a spare battery. And I realized the batteries are at least 100. So I just bought a second saw as my spare on it. I can swap the batteries. It comes with a spare chain. The chains are kind of expensive on these. You get like you get one use and maybe one sharpening. I don't know if you can get 2 sharpenings, maybe, but you can't get several sharpenings like you do out of the regular gas saws. So the chains are a little bit spendy, but the lightweight is great on these. So I just basically bought one as a spare to the other. It also means a lot of times I don't have to carry a gas can with me or oil, because I'll pre-gas them and pre-oil them. And if it's a little bit bigger, I'll pre-gas and oil this. And then I don't have to drag the can of oil or the can of gas. I just bring those with me. Also, one thing I want to throw in as an extra, something I use, it's not a pruning tool, but it's a repair tool. If you've ever seen like Japanese maples, other shrubs, it could be any tree. Let's say this is the trunk and then it splits into a couple of unions. If you get a U shape in here, that's relatively strong, because over the years, layer after wood layer can build up in there. There's a room for that. But and that's called excluded bark. Well, anyway, it's not trapped. Sometimes the trees, you'll get it, the bark will fold in. It's called included bark, and it's weak. I mean, you could like peel it apart, or the snow will split it. So what I do to repair it, I'll just often just drill right through one stem, and I'm talking for things that are about an inch diameter to 2 to 3 inches in diameter. I drill through it in straight in line. I drill on the other one, and what I do is I feed a 1/16 inch cable through it, which I didn't grab. So I feed a 1/16 inch cable through it, and I don't think you can see them from here. There's these little ferrules. So say my arm's the branch. I'll drill through, I'll drill, feed the cable through. I'll put a little teeny washer on the backside, and then I'll put one of these ferrules on there, and just crimp it down with the crimping tool here and pinch it. And then I just feed the cable through the hole of the stem over on this side, take it through, cut it to length, put a little bit of washer on it, put the ferrule on it, like put a little bit of tension and then crimp it, and that adds like 100 or 200 pounds of extra oomph to it for resistance on it. And you'd have to watch over a certain number of years, because eventually those get bigger. It might not work, but anyway, it's great for shrubs and small trees, especially like Japanese maples, because sometimes if you can get the weak limb out early when you plant it, do it. But sometimes it's been there for a long time and you can't remove that piece without removing too big of a hole on the trees. So anyway, that's about the extent of what comes to mind today. I'm not going to throw any pruning tips in this, but if you go to my website, which as long as it's running is mdvaden.com, on the home menu, you go down, click like landscape advice or landscape tips, and you can go in there, and I have some tips on pruning. I would say look for a page on sunburn damage is really a critical thing that relates to pruning and timing. In pruning, it's not so much that there's not really like a time of year that you should prune, except for a few exceptions. What's really relevant for almost everything is when you should not prune. And the sunburn factor applies to virtually everything you can think of. That's probably the biggest damager of trees I've seen is sunburn. So I give you a chance just to read whatever I've written on there. And on that note, I will say adios. Again, Mario Vaden, certified arborist, Southern Oregon. Have a great day.